There was a new study that just came out last week about the happiness of couples who met online versus those who met in person, and the results are kind of shocking. This is an international study done. It was in Warklaw, which is where the University of Warklaw, which I believe is in Poland, and they used participants, over 6,000 participants in over 50 countries. So it's really an international database that they're pulling from. And what they found was that people who met their romantic partners online are actually less happy in love compared to those who met in person. Now, the article that I was reading went on to explain a little bit of this and why that might be the case, but the gist comes down to a couple of reasons. One notably being that the partner's lower relationship satisfaction and intensity of love that was experienced really started to come from the fact that people who meet on dating apps often have different levels of commitment that they're willing to bring to the table. The article talks about how early adopters of online dating really were looking for that long-term partner just through another format online, but modern kind of adapters of this online dating are looking for more casual relationships, more what can you do for me type of thing. And that tells us a lot about where our culture is coming from. This can be especially troubling for those of us who are Catholic out in the dating world, because we're told to go out and find our spouse in whatever way is available to us. And in our modern world, it really looks like a lot of these people are online. There's not a lot of places where couples are able to really find suitable partners. Singles are either in weird single circles that meet up and this is their purpose, or they're told that go where the people are. And yes, the people are online, but the level of commitment that you're going to find from the people online varies greatly. And so for those of us who are Catholic and looking for our spouse, it can be an additional kind of heartache to learn these things from these studies, because first of all, it's agreeing with what we're feeling out there in the actual experience of being on the dating apps. We're feeling burnt out, we're feeling exhausted, we're feeling like there's no good partners out there, that maybe we're blaming it on the algorithm, right? Is this all that's out here in my area, or whatever the case may be. But the reality is that we are looking for something that most of the world is not looking for, which already has its own set of hardships, its own set of obstacles to overcome. But that doesn't mean that we're doomed. And in this video, we're going to talk about, why we feel so over dating apps, especially as Catholics, and what we can do instead so that we can feel like excited to get out there dating again. Because for a lot of us, a lot of Catholic singles out there, especially those who have been in this dating pool for a long time, we're really tired. And when we're really tired, we don't want to go into the dating pool again. We don't want to dip our toes in. We don't want to try again because of all the experiences we've had that have told us that this is not the way to do it, or these people here are not here for the right reasons, or this is just not where you've had bad experiences, and so you don't want to spend your time getting into another situation like that. And listen, I get it. I am in the same boat. There's so many times where I've deleted the apps, gotten off of this specific one because of experiences that I've had on there. And it's not saying that that's not necessarily wrong, or taking a break for a minute is not a bad thing to get our mind on straight. But in order to retain that hope that we ought to have in our futures and in who's out there and what's available to us, and that we're not just part of this statistic that is growing, that people who are single are going to remain single for longer. We don't want to be part of that. And so we need to do things differently. That's what it all comes down to. What we've been doing has gotten us where we're at. And so we have to do things differently. So let's take a look at some of the real reasons that we're over dating apps, right? Why are we over them? Well, there's a couple of reasons. Number one, it's the platforms. Okay, the platforms, like I said in the research article that I was reading, said that early adopters of online dating were really looking for their long-term partners. And as dating apps became more popular and people were using them for different things, i.e. more casual relationships or hookups or things like that, the dating app developers really leaned into that. And you can see that with the rise of dating apps whose real intent is to match you with people to hook up with or have a casual relationship rather than seeking people who may actually be in it for the long haul. So we see that the actual platforms, there are problems there in terms of the intentionality behind them, how they're made, how their algorithms are set up. So that's something that's outside of our control, right? Another reason why we're feeling so over it is because we use the platforms in the wrong way. It's our own user error when we're approaching these platforms. A lot of times we come to a platform like this saying, whether it be their marketing who is promising us the world, promising your partner's on here, Hinge, the app to be deleted, right? All these things. And we go on, we say, okay, enough is enough. I'm going to do it. I'm going to make my profile. And that's kind of it. Right? We step back and we think, okay, I've done my part and now I'm just waiting for my person to find me. And a lot of the different ways that we go about it, use the app, interact with people on the app, that's on us. Okay, yes, the platforms, they have their own issues, but how we're using the platforms, that also plays a huge part in why we are feeling so tired and hopeless on the apps today. There's a lot of ghosting happening. There's a lot of not seeing the human behind the screen. There's a lot of taking people for granted. There's a lot of assuming going on. There's a lot of kind of this shopper mentality. There's a lot of putting too much too much of your hope in the platform itself rather than how you're using the platform. Another reason why we're just so over dating apps is because over time, dating has drastically changed, and yet our romantic ideals remain the same. What do I mean by that? I mean that over time, dating has changed, especially in the last couple of decades. It's changed drastically. Yet, we're still fed the nostalgic early 2000s rom-coms, and we want a love story like that. But the dating that's happening in our day-to-day in 2025 is drastically different than how dating was when those movies were written or filmed or portrayed. And so the reason why we are so attached, whether it be nostalgia or secretly harboring this hope that that can be possible for us one day, is and yet we're harboring this hope, but we're going about dating in a completely different way and hoping for the same result. And there is a discrepancy there for sure. Dating over time has changed. Today, it really looks like something that's very transactional. And I was just reading a little bit of this book, Interior Freedom by Father Jacques Philippe. Very popular. If you haven't read it, it's a great book. It's on the Hollow app. I'm listening to it on there. And in that section I was just listening to was about this freedom of this gift of love. And that for so many of us, our temptation, because of original sin, because of the world we live in, our temptation is to see love as transactional. I'll do this if you do this. I'll put my differences aside if I get this in return. or I'll give you this much effort if you give me this much attention. Whereas the way that we were created and what real love is all about is this selfless giving of love. That it's a gift, that it doesn't require a response. And so just thinking about that and thinking about how, I've seen a couple of videos circulating the internet over the last couple of weeks of like, this is what dating looks like in 2025. And that's why so many people are giving up. And it's a bunch of shots of couples together when all of the physical exertion is put on the woman instead of the man. The man is walking around without holding anything while the woman is holding the backpack and the kid and the stroller and all of these things, or, rowing on a little romantic rowboat and you have a couple back to back where the woman is rowing and the man is just sitting there being rowed around. And it's something that is a representation, a visual representation of really what's going on. And not only in, yes, these things are actually happening. Men are not stepping up in the same way that we saw only a couple of decades ago, but also what's really going on in the internal, because that's an external representation of those things, but we're also putting a lot more on the feminine heart, a lot more on the woman to provide that stability in the relationship, to be pursuing, as that was for a long time, the man's role. And so we start to see this and we start to see these changes, and it's really hard to be in the reality of these changes in a world where this is what's typically done, and yet have our being, the way that we were created, long for something different, and be really touched by the stories, the movies, the books, the literature that portray that other type of love that we were actually made for and that we actually crave, right? And so there's a big discrepancy because of the way that dating has changed, because of the way our culture has changed, because of the ways that we've thrown out these Christian ideals that the world mocks today. But in reality, that is what sets us free. By going back to the beginning, by going back to how we were created and working like so hard to reclaim them, those ideals. It's not just for the special few who get to experience it. It should be for all. And that's why we have such a hard time in our dating culture today, because we're not seeing that. We're not experiencing it. And it all feels like we're missing something, because we are. Now, another reason why we are just so over dating apps in today's day and age is that our culture is so afraid of commitment. We're so afraid of commitment. When I was growing up and I was a teenager, I noticed a lot of people who were just a few years older than me using the term like commitment issues. Okay. And in the last 5-10 years, no one is using that language anymore. I don't know if you've noticed that, but it used to be a thing a couple decades ago or a decade ago, for example, of people naming what's wrong and saying it's commitment issues. These people are just not ready to commit, or they're not willing to commit. And these days we're not even naming it. It's become that prevalent. We're not even saying, hey, this is the problem. And because by naming a problem, we're saying there's something wrong here and that there's a different way of doing it. And so it's easier for people to just live their lives and not call out what's happening, because they don't have to change if they don't call out what's happening. But what is happening is that our entire culture has become afraid of commitment. In the article that I mentioned earlier that I was reading, one of the reasons why online dating is kind of like this scam that a lot of us have fallen for is because it tells us, right, the pool is big. There's a lot of fish in this pond. And while that's true in a sense, the people who are actually potential partners for you in terms of how you think, how you what different thing like what things you like and what you have in common and what your common worldview is. It didn't it didn't expand overnight. Those same still amount of people who would work for you remain the same, but it's given us an illusion of options. And so what happens with this illusion of options is that we are so afraid to commit to someone unless they are absolutely perfect. Like this, having this idea that God is going to put the perfect person, like Jesus reincarnate, at our doorstep. And if it's not that perfect person, then we're not going to swipe on them or we're not going to send them a message. But how are we going to get to know them if that is our mindset? Anyway, that's a whole nother topic for another day. But what I'm saying here is that our entire culture is so afraid of commitment, and it's just propelled by this illusion of options that online dating has kind of given us, so that we think that, oh, well, this person's not, 100% perfect for me. And maybe it's my own mindset, but I don't have to worry about that because there's so many more fish in the sea, because there's so many more options out there for me. Why don't I just get back on the dating apps and match with a few dozen people? That's what's happening. And the last reason that we're going to go into today about why we're feeling so over dating apps is that the humanity has really been stripped away from dating on these online sterile platforms, which leaves us with really sterile interactions with people, really transactional, like, hey, what good do you have for me? And if it's not what I'm hoping for, then goodbye, right? And this has replaced real humanity and real connection, and that is truly what we're starving for. That's why, if you have ever had the experience where you're having a lot of trouble connecting with people online, and you are coworkers with people who are so not your type, so not who you would ever see yourself with, and you get along better with them than you do with anyone online, even who have the same values, who have a similar vision in life, who have more things in common with you than your coworker. And it's because of that humanity and that connection that's only possible in an in-person type of relationship where you're getting to know each other and you're chit-chatting about whatever, and you just start to form that bond because we're humans and that's how we're created. Now, I don't want to leave us in this place of like, oh my gosh, we're so tired and we're so over dating apps. So we're going to talk about a couple of solutions, okay? A couple of ways that we can start to reframe how we think about dating, especially dating apps, and how we have power to change what the reality in front of us seems to be. So let's talk about this solution. Number one is to use the dating apps the right way. Okay, use them as tools for introductions. Like I said, the very first reason why we're really struggling is because the apps are created in this way. And the second one was because our user error of the apps, right? So let's use them in the best way we know how and use them as tools for introductions. What's great about dating apps is that they give you access to people who are looking in your area or throughout the world, who are putting themselves out there on a platform ready to be seen by someone else. And so if we use them as a tool for introductions and saying, hey, this person's out there, I'm just going to introduce myself and see if this goes anywhere, that's a better way to look at it than having all of your hope put into the actual platform and just assuming that you're going to find your spouse on there and without doing anything on your own end and getting really wrapped up in the games that are played, in the, different types of different types of like features on an app, right? Use it for introductions, seeing who's out there, and take it off the app as soon as possible. That is my best piece of advice. Another avenue of this solution is really to focus on real connection. Practice if you need to, and listen, we all need the practice, but focus on real connection. Focus on the person in front of you. And look at your own life. Look at the other things going on in your life. Are you replacing real connection in other areas of your life with online? Are you scrolling Instagram or TikTok more than you are in person with anyone? Look at the different areas of your life and look at where you are replacing real connection with the internet or other substitutions for our attention, and really start to pour into the people around you and into those relationships so that you can practice at, but also be fed by that real connection that we're all craving. And lastly, the last bit of the solution that I want to chat about today is taking ownership of your relationships. Now, this looks like a million different things, and in two ways I want to talk about it here today. Taking ownership of what's going right and what's going wrong in your interactions in the dating world and on the dating apps. So what I mean by that is a lot of times we blame either the people on the apps or the apps themselves, the algorithm. But we are so quick to blame whatever circumstances are out there, and we're never really looking at and seeing our own role in the breakdown of what's happening in our relationships. So I want you to take a really honest look at, okay, if people are constantly ghosting me, is it because of my tone? Is it because of I'm not very welcoming? Am I ghosting first? Why is nothing going past the initial liking of the profile and the matching? Like, why aren't conversations happening? Why aren't people, asking me out? Or why am I always asking people out and getting rejected? Or, whatever the case may be, take a look at your role in it and take ownership of that. And the second way I want to talk about it is ownership of how you think about and approach in your own inputs that you're inputting into your life. So many of us can get stuck in places where we're just expecting the work that we ever did in our lives to carry us through the rest of our lives. But the reality is that we're humans. And one of the things about humanity is that we are constantly changing. And that's a beautiful thing because we are constantly growing and constantly becoming who we're meant to be. It's this continual growth. So when we feel like we are in a good place, or we feel like we just want to coast in wherever we're at, that's a really dangerous place to be in because we're refusing to continue to grow. We are looking at the reality of our humanity and saying, I reject that part of my design. And that is not okay. Because when we reject that part of our design, and when we stay stagnant, and when we blame everyone else for things that are going on, instead of looking at the inputs in our lives and saying, this is a skill I actually need to grow in, or there are things about this area in my life that I could learn more about, or this is an area where I can really use some more practice in my life so that the result that I want can come that much faster. I've been doing a lot of research on this idea of the 10,000 hours rule. Have you ever heard of it? It's by a researcher. His name is Malcolm Gladwell, and I'm not going to get into it too much in this video, but it's fascinating. And essentially what it's saying is that to get really good at anything, it takes deliberate practice over a long amount of time. And so when we're looking at things in our lives like relationships, connection, romantic partners, that type of thing, we have to look at how much practice, deliberate practice, are we pouring in? Are we approaching it with this idea of, okay, well, I just have to find someone, and then once I'm in that relationship, it's just going to work out because I have a hole that's missing in me, and this is going to fill it. Where the question should rather be, I have so much love to give in my how I'm created, in my humanity, and yes, I want to be matched with someone to receive someone in that way, but I also desperately want to love someone in that way. And how can I give to that person? How can I make this person's life better? How can I make their day better? How can I make their hour better? Right? That's a different outlook. And so when we look at taking ownership of our relationships and taking ownership of our inputs and what we're doing for ourselves to grow as a human being, we have to look at opportunities in which to do that. And for that, I want to introduce you and invite you into the Dating for Marriage Challenge. As Catholics, we see that dating really is meant for discernment of marriage. It's not some casual thing that we just want to do and then move on with our lives, but it's something that has a purpose. Dating is like a road that gets us to a destination that we're wanting to go, to our vocation, to marriage. And so when we see it that way, we see it as, okay, that's something that I might need practice on, or I might need skills in. And you're not weak for needing a little bit of help there. You're actually really, really smart because you're saying, hey, there's something missing here and there's a solution out there. Let me go find it. That's using all of your brain cells. That's using your God-given will and intellect in the right way. So I just want to introduce you and invite you into the Dating for Marriage Challenge. It's 2 nights where we really come together, debunk some false beliefs about what's going on in the dating world and in ourselves, and how to build back better, what to replace those beliefs with, how can we do better. And in this Dating for Marriage Challenge, we're really talking about why dating today feels really awkward, what to do about it, and how to combat that, what to do instead, and how can we make it not awkward? How can we make it feel more natural so that we're not burned out anymore? And that we want to get up and say, I'm going to put my feet back in the dating pool because I know what I am here for and I really want a spouse. And so that's what we're doing here. Focus driven, mission oriented. We are on a path to get you married. So I invite you to join the Dating for Marriage Challenge. And if you liked this video, I just really encourage you to share it with your friends, share it with anyone who might need to hear these things, and make sure you hit the follow button to subscribe and get notified when more videos like this come on. I'm cheering for you.